tobacco, why to quit. So myself Prabhat, I'm a faculty working at Center for Addiction Medicine, Nimans. And the reason I gave my email ID is that all the slides are basically can be reproduced as a whole or with the acknowledgement to the Nimans. And any modification or any change you want to do, please let us know. Otherwise, it's a copy free. I don't have anything to disclose in the presentation. What I am going to do in next half an hour is I'll start with the problem statement. Then I'll talk about effects of tobacco use, and then I'll speak about addictive power of tobacco, benefits of quitting, and I'll conclude. Now, there is no other psychoactive drug that affects the brain chemistry as much as nicotine. Reducing or quitting tobacco may be the hardest challenge a smoker has ever faced. But a compassionate and positive support will greatly enhance the tobacco user's chances of success. I thought we focus in India. Now, in India, 35% adults, including both gender, use tobacco. Majority of users smokeless tobacco, and nearly 1 in 2 adult males and 1 in 5 adult females are using some form of tobacco. And if you look at the table here, in the smoking percentage among males are 24, whereas smokeless is 33. So definitely smokeless people using smokeless tobacco is much higher than smoking. And in female also, although the smoking is pretty less number, but smokeless is very high. 2 in 5 adults in rural areas and 1 in 4 in urban areas use tobacco. So basically, although the usage of tobacco is more in rural areas compared to urban areas. Now, smoking reduces the median survival rate by 6 to 8 years. Smokers, as compared to with non-smokers, suffer chiefly from tuberculosis, respiratory, vascular, and neoplastic diseases. In India, 1 people die every 40 seconds because of tobacco-related problem. And I mean, the most difficult part is that deaths due to tobacco are likely to be more than the double between 1998 to 2030. Now, you can see a footer below. That is my reference for almost all the slides. And this is a book from WHO's CRO. It's available online free. The book name is Helping People Quit Tobacco, a manual for doctors and dentists by Professor Pratibha Murthy, Dr. Murli Mohan, and Dr. Hiramat. So I will urge all of you to download and have the books. Look at the common forms of tobacco used in India and Southeast regions, mostly BDs, cigarettes, cheroot, and you all know that smokeless forms of different types. The chewing tobacco, raw tobacco, the tobacco used for dental paste, and snuff. So I think I'm pretty sure most of you are aware of this fact. This I thought interesting to see, because the reason I wanted to put this slide, I mean, it's well known when there is a tobacco problem among healthcare professional, the chance of delivering its tobacco services is less. So if you look at this survey, which is done predominantly in the southern East Asia, and look at the percentage of dental students using tobacco, in India, let's see, 11%, similar medical students, 13%, definitely much higher in Nepal and Myanmar, where 28+%. And look at the intervention. So almost similar, 10% or 10 to 12% of the dental students and around 22% of medical students had learned how to use the tobacco cessation techniques among their patients. And also another trend that comes out in this whole table is the poorer the country, higher the tobacco use. Probably look at Sri Lanka, which is definitely health indices are pretty high, and the tobacco is much lesser. But in general, it looks like a trend. So if I summarize, nearly 1 in 3 to 4 third-year dental and medical students in Bangladesh smoke cigarette. The survey was done on third-year dental students. Both cigarette smoking and use of other tobacco products is high among dental and medical students in Nepal. About 1 in 4 dental students in Myanmar smoke cigarette, and 1 in 6 medical students uses other forms of tobacco. And the last point, tobacco use among health professionals is an important barrier to deliver the service. So again, one thing is very clear. As a health professional, all of us need to be tobacco free before we could definitely effectively deliver the services. Now coming to the why you need to quit. Now, risk of death from tuberculosis was 6.3 times higher In other respiratory illnesses, 3.7 times, vascular causes 1.7 times, and neoplastic causes twice. So there is definite evidence of smokers dying or suffering more than the non-smokers. If you come to specifics a little bit, uh, look at tuberculosis. Now, its infection, progression and development of disease, compliance to treatment, its outcome and mortality, all each and everything gets affected by and worse in the tobacco users than non-tobacco users. And current smoking double the risk of tuberculosis. Coming to cardiovascular disease, odds of acute myocardial infarction in those smoking more than 10 BDs is around 4 to 4 times. Now, smokers 3 to 6 times compared to non-smokers. So whether you smoke BD or a person smokes cigarette, the risk almost 3 to 4 times, thrice or quadruple than the non-smokers. So this is one of the very specific condition which is associated with the smoking. That is your thromboangiitis obliterans TAO, where also there basically it means there is less blood supply to the peripheries, extremities, to legs. So here you can see 34 times more likely in person smoking more than 20 BDs, 7 times who smokes more 11 to 20 BDs, and 4 times. So basically what I am trying to tell you is that this is such a severe condition, and any amount of cigarette or BDs you take, person takes, is likely to suffer. The right side you can see the early part of gangrene, and 3 fingers, lateral 3 fingers of the leg has gone, and obviously there is a severe ulceration followed with gangrene. So these are again shows the significance of smoking and disease. I thought briefly I'll mention about this association of smoking and cardiovascular disease, its mechanism. The reason being, this is one of the major morbidity. Now what smoking does, it damages the endothelial lining, narrow the arteries, impair the blood flow, reduce arterial elasticity, and increase the risk of ruptures. So the damage to the endothelial lining is a crucial in case of smoking, which further complicates other things. It increases the risk of thrombosis because it increases the adhesiveness of the platelets. So the blood gets thrombosed early. The most third point, which means there is a because of carbon monoxide of smoking, it leads to formation of carboxyhemoglobin that leads to endothelial destruction, and it has a impact on the lipid profile, whereas the increase in cholesterol, triglyceride, LDL, VLDL, and other parameters. Similarly, if you come to the CNS stroke, smoking increases the risk of stroke by 2 to 4 times. Now, women who are on oral contraceptive pill and smoke have 20 times risk of a coronary artery disease. It's a substantially high. Briefly about respiratory diseases, I can see the right side and X-ray. So there is increased bronchitis, bronchiolitis, influenza, pneumonia. A common condition is a COPD, that is chronic obstructive pulmonary dyspnea, where there is chronic cough, sputum, breathing difficulties, and emphysema. The right side picture shows the emphysematous bullae in the low basal part of the lung. Tobacco impairs ciliary cavity and mucociliary clearance. There is hypertrophy of mucosal gland, and it inhibits the protease enzyme. Now, this is one of the areas where the strongest association has come independently. There are host of cancers which risk increases. I will deal few cancers which much higher. Lung smoker, in case smoker, the 10 times high risk, it has lung cancer. Larynx 20 times. This probably my other colleagues in the dental department, they can tell better, but I will summarize. 10 times higher oropharyngeal cancer among male smoker and 5 times female smoker. Smoking has been independently associated with oropharyngeal cancer apart from oral HPV infection. 90% of oral cancers are tobacco users. Direct contact with carcinogen in smokeless tobacco is one of the cause. And at the end, the concomitant alcohol use increases the risk of developing oropharyngeal cancer. Right side, you can see the gentleman with cancer in the cheek, and below photo is for cancer of the hard palate and alveolus. Now I thought I will talk about BD a little bit, because BD is one of the things which has been very commonly used by our population. Now, studies from India has shown that BD smoker have twofold higher risk of developing oral cancer and 5 times higher risk of developing cancer of the base of the tongue. So basically, threefold increase of hypopharynx, laryngeal cancer, esophageal cancer, lung cancer. So, I mean, BD is one of the most, apart from the other form of tobacco, BD is one of the most strongest associated with the different cancers. Okay, now this part, although it looks others, but it doesn't mean that they're not significant. As you said, the first case, although the person was lady who had no serious physical problem, system problem, but she's ill health, she's anemic, premature aging, and some study has reported that smokers appeared up to 4.7 years older than non-smokers. Sexual dysfunction and impaired fertility. A study from China reported that 50% of the population who comes to for sexual dysfunction has a smoking problem. Reduced bone density, inflammatory bowel diseases, and different diseases of oral cavity and precancerous lesion. If I can summarize, these are the adverse effect with tobacco use. You can start from top to bottom. You can see the brain, strokes, skin, eye, ear disease, including middle ear infection, psoriasis, cataract, macular degeneration. Respiratory system has cancer, tuberculosis, asthma, COPD, brittle bones, compromised immune system. I mean, one part I didn't deal is the pregnancy in babies. As Anirudh was speaking, that one of the reason she was, our first patient was feeling very guilty that when she was carrying baby, that time she used to smoke. But fortunately, there is no miscarriage, nothing happened. But again, the risk is very high. Miscarriage, stillbirth, preterm delivery, low birth weight, then premature aging, oropharynx lesions, and we discussed already heart and circulatory lesions, hypertension, heart disease, heart attacks, coronary and other problems, and sexual and reproductive health issues. So there is host of all factors. I mean, there is no system that is not affected by tobacco, although it's one of the preventable cause. If I can, I thought this statistically it is very important. I have not taken the where odds ratio are a little lesser, but definitely if you take odds ratio 1 means there is no difference. But a person who smokes, for him the risk of cardiac disease is almost 3 to 4 times. Sudden cardiac death is 2 to 4 times. Peripheral vascular disease is you can see the range 4 to 7 to for cigarette to 7 to 30 per BD, and for the COPD has 30. So 30 times he's likely to get a smoker is likely to get a COPD. Tuberculosis 2.5 times, and look at lung cancer and larynx cancer so high. So then obviously macular degeneration. Now, there is a very detailed odds ratio including all the condition in the reference book which I quoted there. So you can definitely get, as per your specialty, you can take that condition. But definitely all cardiac system, respiratory system, cancer, all are significantly increases in the smokers. Okay, I thought I'll just why it happens like this. Now, because the reason is that tobacco contains a lot of toxins, and there are more than 4,000 toxins, but at least 43 are well proven cancer causing substances like acetone, arsenic, monoxide, hydrogen cyanide, cadmium. This is a small nice picture where you can see how the things that is been used to make a cigarette, and how is related to so many things, starting lighter fluid, ethanol, then you have hydrogen cyanide, candle wax, stearic acid. So many things are there, like batteries like cadmium. So lot of chemicals are involved in making a cigarette. If I can summarize, this is the chemicals in tobacco and their action. So nicotine, as you know, is the primary substance. It's a very powerful addictive drug. I'll come back in a couple of slides that why it is so powerful. It definitely physiologically causes increase in heart rate and blood pressure, has adverse effect on cardiovascular health. Carbon monoxide, that is smoke, it actually acts as an added stress factor to precipitate cardiovascular disease. It combines with hemoglobin to form carboxyhemoglobin, which reduces the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood to different systems of the body. And hydrogen cyanide and acrolein works as a respiratory irritant and can paralyze ciliary movements, thereby increasing the risk of infection in the lung. Phenol works as an irritant and tuberculin chemical. And one of the most specific thing is lung carcinogen, the PAH, polyaromatic hydrocarbon, and TSNA, tobacco specific nitrosamine. As you know, nitrosamines are well known carcinogenic drugs. Again, I thought I'd come back to BD and some of the facts about the BD. Now, if you look at a BD contains 1/5 to 2/3 of the amount of tobacco in a cigarette. I think all of us agree BD is smaller size. And however, if you take weight for weight, BD contains higher nicotine concentration, that is almost 21.2 milligram percent, compared to commercial filtered cigarettes and unfiltered cigarettes. Again, tar levels of and the BDs are much higher, 45 to 50 milligram per 1 BD. So similarly, one study found that BDs produced approximately 3 times the amount of carbon monoxide and nicotine and 5 times the amount of tar as cigarettes. As with cigarette, tobaccos from the BDs contain many carcinogenic chemicals, specifically TSNA, that is tobacco specific nitrosamine. And there is no difference between cigarette, BD, and smokeless tobacco. All of them produces equal amount of TSNA, which are potent carcinogen. And BDs and chuttas have higher uranium content, and BD contains more than 1.5 times higher levels of carbon monoxide, ammonia, and other chemicals. So BD is. So I thought, in a lighter note, I thought something to discuss is: is there a hidden meaning to these names? And this is slides by Dr. Pankaj Chaturvedi. Now, this is a famous name of a cigarette, Downhill. Yeah, so basically it means downhill. Sorry, downhill. So before addiction, you are active and playing, but following addiction and different traumatic illness, and it can start from the ill health, weakness to trauma, anxiety, obliterants. You will end up in different conditions. Okay, this is a famous cigarette inspired by a surgical tool that is often used for smokers' lifetime. Right. Okay, this is again I think very common cigarette name. So you can see again it's a seizure. Again, again it indicates how. Okay, so so whether this are the dirty yellow flecks over the teeth or regular tobacco uses. So, but again, right. So now just talk about passive smoking. I thought I'll just briefly talk about this because this is again a big issue. Now, it is also known as environmental tobacco smoke. Basically, it means involuntary inhalation of tobacco smoke by a non-smoker. So it can be two types, like left out smoke by a smoker in the flesh, or a mainstream smoke, or original smoke from burning cigarette, or side stream smoke. So the different types of this. Now, side stream smoke contains 3 times more nicotine and tar and 50 times more cancer-causing substances than the mainstream smoke. That again highlights the point that passive smoking is equally dangerous, and a pregnant woman exposed to it to have increased chance of like women who is smoking, abortion, fetal death, and delivery of low birth weight. So I think this is the most important question we will discuss now. We all of us learned that tobacco causes a lot of harm, involve all the systems, can cause to as serious as cancer, to as less as ill health. But why people continue to take tobacco? So basically, the question is why tobacco is addictive. Okay, this is a quote from quitsmoking.com. I just thought I would drop by personally and congratulate you on your accomplishment. No one has ever quit smoking 17,000 times in 1 year before. So again, it depicts the point how difficult for a person to quit because of addictive nature. Again, just briefly, like if you can roughly calculate, it's 100 times more addictive than heroin and 1,000 times more than cocaine. And in the right side, you can see different proportion of users that become dependent. Let's say out of 100 people who started using some substance, there are 32% chance they could use for tobacco, whereas only 23 people heroin and cannabis is less. But that again means that tobacco has a very high propensity to get hooked to it. If I briefly summarize what is addiction and what it is. So addiction is basically it's a a constellation of couple of symptoms. You can have personal, biological, and social. So personal, obviously, personal choice, personal choice. Then, if regular intake leads to a state where you are occupied or preoccupied with the smoke, or you anticipate that as soon as my thing is over, I need to have a smoke. So preoccupation, anticipation. Then biological vulnerability, where obviously genetics plays a role. Then there is a social situation and stress, environment, all these things comes to play. So now the only thing is that when you talk about addiction, there is something known as reward pathway. Now this reward pathway is by default natural to everybody, and which is there with everybody. And this normally reward pathway is activated by natural rewards like food, water, sex, or any activities and exercise. But now here what happens, a person when he starts nicotine, it get activated, all right. But when the person continues to take nicotine, the nicotine hijack the reward pathway. So if you look at this diagram, that brighter part is the reward pathway. This is a track which start from the ventral tegmental area and extend to the nucleus accumbens. There is the areas, so basically it's a limbic lobe function, and but there is the extension to the prefrontal cortex, and where and this path regulates the reward, pleasure, euphoria, motor function, decision making. So there is a constellation of not only reward, but also to decide whether I should take or not take, also controlled by this extension of this path. Now what it makes, now because it's connected to the prefrontal cortex, so decision making capacity gets impaired. So that means in spite of having difficulties or harm, you will continue. Because it's connected to hippocampus, which is the area of memory and learning, so emotion, and amygdala, which is emotional process. So if there is a stress or a difficulty, amygdala gets activated, and it activates the reward pathway, and ultimately the person has to smoke to cut down, and so stress plays a role. Similarly, memory plays a role in this. If I summarize this thing, so cigarette smoking is controlled by a receptor known as nicotinic acetylcholine receptor, which is associated with host of other behaviors and environmental cues, which is environmental attention, reward learning, and memory and mood. Now, I just want to tell that, see, this is a natural receptor in the brain. So if a person have a smoke, definitely with activation of natural receptor, there will be increased attention and the learning, which is a natural path. But by repeated exposure, person gets addicted to the smoking. Also, to whole thing, there is a route of administration which makes things further complicated. Like the route of inhalation of smoking is it only takes 10 to 20 seconds to reach the brain. So it goes very fast, and this shift in transmission from lung to blood-brain barrier makes it more vulnerable. So it goes fast and troughs fast. So it gets eliminated from the body almost 2 to 3 hours, and next 6 to 8 hours is out of the body. But a peak is achieves very fast, and because it troughs very fast, the cycle to take smoking continues. So sometimes they describe that it works like crack cocaine. So that's why you must have seen the people when there is a after let's say 1 to 2 hours of break of smoking, there will be a significant craving, and a person seeks out for the used tobacco. Now, when do you call it nicotine addiction or dependence? Probably you need to, as I've been mentioning before, you need to have a constellation of symptoms, and out of these 3 should be there for at least 1 year. So first is craving. There is a strong desire to use the nicotine. Withdrawal symptom, when person does not have smoke, he feels, or use tobacco, he feels irritable, restless, some sort of uneasiness. Increase in regular use of tobacco, use despite harm, difficulty in controlling use, and use despite the harmful effects. Now, if you come back to quitting tobacco, as I mentioned, it's one of the difficult tasks, but still, any point of time a person quit tobacco, it is beneficial to his health. If you look at, summarize the benefits of quit tobacco, we have 2: short term in the sense of well-being, and long term, I will come back. But the important point I want to highlight here is make tobacco users aware of the benefits. that will be gained by CSN and not let the fear of withdrawal symptom cloud their understanding of the benefits. That is the whole point. In the beginning part of presentation, I highlighted the difficult, the effect of the tobacco, and if they quit, they get so much of benefit in every aspect of their life. This is a small example which is very effective. Now, if you stop smoking within 20 minutes, your blood pressure, pulse rates drops to normal. Oxygen level in the next 8 hours, oxygen level increases to normal, and carbon monoxide level drops the blood. As I mentioned before, when a person smokes regularly, the carbon monoxide increases and it hampers the carrying capacity of the hemoglobin to take the oxygen. Next 24 hours, chance of a cardiac or heart attack goes down. 48 hours, ability to smell a taste improves. Walking becomes much easier. So there is a sense of wellness starts. And next 2 weeks to 3 months, blood circulation improves. No more, cold hand, cold feet, and lung functioning increase up to 30%. So next couple of months, coughing, sinus congestion, shortness of breath all decrease dramatically. And in one year, the risk of a cardiac disease, coronary heart disease, is cut to half. And 5 years, risk of stroke reduced to that of a non-smoker. Risk of cancer of the mouth, throat, and esophagus cut half. And risk of lung cancer also decreases. And interestingly, 15 years, if person able to continue to quit, then it's become like a non-smoker. So the point I want to tell you here is that at any point of time, person is willing to take a call to quit, and you should definitely intervene and provide intervention. Irrespective of the stage of motivation, he is going to gain something out of that. So this can be used as another good psychological model, even for an unmotivated person to at least discuss issues. A few couple of slides I will close. Now, the key learning points what we discussed today: smoking and chewing and other forms of tobacco causes serious health problems. Practically every system of the body is adversely affected by the use of tobacco, and the mechanism of many of these effects has been understood very clearly now. Unlike in the past, where tobacco use, nobody used to advocate about tobacco use. I mean, people come with chest infection, will come with dental problem, will come with cardiac problem. Hardly any tobacco intervention is given, knowing the fact that that is one of the cause, preventable cause. But fortunately, with advancement, most of the etiologies has been explored. I have not gone to genetics and all deliberately. So educating people about the general risks from tobacco use and personalizing this risk, which is very crucial, helps in tobacco cessation. And the second point, as I have been mentioning again and again, the personalizing this risk to the individual. If you hear the first case, how Dr. Priyanka in his counseling session has personalized her weight gain and aging to her tobacco cessation. So each person is different, and personalizing this risk definitely helps. Now we have discussed about briefly short-term and long-term benefits of tobacco cessation. Risk for various diseases continue to reduce over the year with complete cessation. Even when there is established disease, let's say there is somebody has a cardiac problem, let's say somebody has a bypass, or let's say somebody is known hypertensive, but still the advantage of quitting. Now, not starting at all or quitting early are the best strategy to prevent tobacco-related harm. So, if that means if you see somebody and in history you got that person not using tobacco, never forget to congratulate him and tell that you have done the best decision not to start tobacco, or somebody has started and have quitted, or you need help, he's quitted. You should definitely acknowledge the effort he has made. Now, what is our responsibility as a healthcare professional? You can see the box there. In spite of having on the easy to deliver service, in spite of having a cost-effective service, only 5% of the world's population has access to the comprehensive tobacco cessation service. In spite, it's a big public health problem. So our job is to reduce tobacco use in the community by providing a clear and definite advice on the dangers of tobacco. We have already discussed. Not only that, we should encourage tobacco cessation with proper advice and support and treatment. I think I have stopped here. I finished my presentation. Any questions or anything you can by chat.
Some questions have already come. Dr. Sarita, she wanted to know what is the difference between addiction and dependence.
Okay.
I think she had asked a very fundamental question. Uh, Addiction and dependence. Okay, actually, Professor Sarita, addiction currently addiction and dependence. This dependence, they are this concept has been used in DSM-4 or our ICD-10 also. This dependence, harmful use, they have been the different grades of problem, of different grades of behavioral and cognitive if involvement with tobacco or other addictive substances. Addiction is said to be a very overarching concept which involves the different grades of problems with substance. Hence, DSM-5 currently has amalgamated all this concept into a unitary conception of substance use disorders. So currently, we would for our day-to-day practice, we would not like to divide into the compartmentalize them, and we can consider them as different severity. The substance use disorders of different severity.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you take superficially, both are same, more or less different terms, different part. But what I will extend it further, and I will tell you that knowing the addictive property of tobacco, I mean, anybody using any tobacco, any point of time for regular use needs intervention. Now, obviously, the grades of interventions and the severity of addictions are different thing where your treatment varies. But so one of the way to assess the addiction severity is a Fagerström scale, which we are speaking. So which decides severity, but addiction and dependence more or less similar, and anybody using tobacco needs intervention. Yeah.
There are some other questions also.
Dr. Debanjan asks about e-cigarettes. He says whether they have any protective effect or is that just another myth?
Right. I think thanks Debanjan for asking the question. Now, e-cigarette. I think most of us do know that e-cigarette been promoted very vigorously. Now, e-cigarette. I think you know that is a combination of menthol and different chemicals, which can use a canister, who has been claimed as no tobacco, but the latest Cochrane guideline had not given a clean sheet to it, and some of the actually states started banning the e-cigarettes. Now the question was, the e-cigarette has a protective effect? No, I don't think at this point of time you don't have any evidence to tell, because the biggest challenge in e-cigarette is there is no standardization. What is the content of it? So it's not advised.
In fact, recently WHO has issued a warning regarding use it, that it is not the physicians and the medical community, we are not aware because not much studies have been done, and so it would be too early to say about it.
There's a couple of questions from dentists here. Dr. Shashank asks, what role can a dentist play in providing motivation for smokers to quit?
Thanks, Shashank, asking this very pertinent question. I think, as I've been mentioning again and again, your role is very important, because you are the people who are definitely going to see more and more cases who comes with oral pathology, oral difficulty, and personalizing the risk in a small brief intervention in your setting is going to at least prevent the person to go to the later stage of higher morbidity or health-related illness. So, for you giving a brief discussion, brief inquiry, trying to offer help and advice is definitely go a long way. Those who have difficulty, obviously they can have details. The dentist.
Yeah, I think I just like to second that. And in a lighter vein, I think when you're opening a patient's mouth and looking at the problems that tobacco causes, you can actually give your messages without having any kind of, without the patient being able to say anything in protest. I'm just joking. But actually, the dentists pick up a whole range of early pathology related to tobacco use with both smoking as well as smokers. There have been some dissertations done in our own hospital where we've shown that if you actually do a proper dental examination, many of the early effects can be picked up and patients can be given feedback. Another very, very good way dentists can actually use it is to show the before and after. Many of you, for example, show patients before and after photographs of, dental and orthodontic treatment. In a similar fashion, you could use the same thing to show patients how their oral hygiene suffers, what tobacco cessation can do. And actually, I believe dentists are a very, very important group of health professionals who have first contact with tobacco users. And therefore, your intervention, being trained to intervene, at least giving the patient a feedback about the oral consequences that they already have or are likely to have, and the reversibility of this becomes very important for dentists.
Dr. Kailash asks a very good question. He says, does anyone have ideas about what are the quit rates of patients who try to quit without any medical help?
Thank you, Dr. Kailash, for this very pertinent question in this regard. Actually, it has been seen that people who have tried to quit by their own, the quit rates are less than even 5%. Most of the studies have said that 2 to 3%. But interestingly, even physicians' advice, a simple physician's advice without any very structured or detailed thing, can improve the quit rates to double of that. That is probably the whole idea behind this awareness among the medical community, so that can double the quit rate.
In fact, if you look at the Global Adult Tobacco Survey and you look at former users, it is only about less than 2% of people in India who actually are former quitters. So it's only 2%. So even if you double it to, let's say, 4% or 5%, from the public health perspective, it's a huge, a change in terms of reducing the mortality and morbidity from tobacco smoking. And remember, in the non-communicable diseases target that India has set, by 2025, we want a 30% reduction in the use of tobacco. If we want a 30% reduction in the use of tobacco, all of us to be advocates for tobacco cessation, telling people who haven't started not to, but more importantly, getting more and more people to quit tobacco use.
Dr. Ravi Tejai asks, is one cigarette equivalent to 2 milligrams of a nicotine lozenge a valid equation for replacement therapy?
Yeah, I think Ravi will take up this question. I told we have a detailed session on pharmacotherapy on 3rd Tuesday. We'll take up that time and obviously discuss. Yeah, same thing. Dr. Praveen's question about NRT. As I told, we have not specifically. We're going to discuss that part.
There are a few more questions, sir. A lot of people here are asking about hookahs. What about hookahs that are becoming popular with youngsters in the city? Do they act as addicting as cigarettes and smokeless tobacco? How do we help youngsters in relation to smoking hookahs?
I think first of all, now because it's open, you can unmute and actually ask question. You do not have to send chat. If you want to do, so definitely you can ask. I think hookahs in the young. Unmute when you want to ask. Right. So in answer to this, hookahs in adolescent.
Hookahs, yes, increasingly they have been popular in the urban areas of late, hookah bars and those. It depends basically upon the constituents, what they constitute. They constitute a road of substances from cannabis to tobacco to this type of substances. It depends upon what is constituting that. But yes, of course, it is becoming very popular among the adolescents, and we need to have a idea that how they are going to affecting the adolescents, particularly the vulnerable individuals who are more vulnerable to substances and such influences.
One piece of advice I think Devanjan has taken out. He written that quit rate with simple advice is 8 to 10%. And Nathan 2013. I mean, this is amazing. I mean, your dentist can actually play a very important role. You have simple advice, and your quit rate is so high. Okay.
Just going back to the hookah that some people were mentioning, I think one needs to go into the economics and a little bit, because people who run hookah bars, some of them claim that it's only fruity flavors that they have. Now, fruity flavors are not generally addictive. if you don't create an addiction among the youth, they will not come back to the hookah parlor. So more and more people are realizing that there are addictive substances that are actually put to entice young kids to come to these parlors. And therefore, especially in all areas, both urban and rural, I'm sure, people are being more vigilant to actually find out the constituents of the hookah. And therefore, I think if you're looking for addictive substances and making sure that these kind of bars are not allowed to, to have addictive substances becomes very, very important.
I think that's Saurabh from Antara definitely also mentioned that youngsters, the normalization of the hookah among youngsters, which Pratima mentioned that you need to definitely discourage. And any question?
One of the other things that we've not really discussed is tobacco use as a gateway drug. And I think that's another very, very important concept. It's not a new concept, it's an old concept, but I think one is gradually realizing that many people who use other substances, particularly the illicit substances, start off with tobacco as a gateway drug. So the literature is re-emerging about that and saying perhaps with tobacco control, you probably can have, better, lesser prevalence of other substances of use also. So that's another very important reason for tobacco control and cessation.
A couple of participants have asked the same question.
Connection to the same, Dr. Sasank's question is that people consume cannabis by filling it with a cigarette. I mean, that's what Pratima was highlighting. Now, if it's a gateway drug, if you can decrease or stop the cigarette smoking, then obviously you can control most of the problem. And it is very common people using a mixture of cannabis and cigarette, particularly predominantly cannabis dependent population.
What is this? I read it in I think Facebook, whatever. It's like nicotine content in toothpaste. I think one article circulated and Colgate came out with vehemently opposing that toothpaste doesn't contain things like that. And if that is the case of in generation, I mean in children, if they are exposed to nicotine in the early age and the consequences, is it true? Because I'm not sure about that. In some places, some people they agree that it is some nicotine there in toothpaste. So, and chances of even that is a kind of initiation, then it may go ahead from the young age on. So, just.
In fact, I think Dr. Saharaj has asked a very important question, that tobacco and content of nicotine in different forms. Traditionally, commonly we see these forms like cigarettes and gutka, but apart from others, there are a range of commonly used commodities which contain some amount of this tobacco.
The dentifrices are one of the most common, and the dentifrices are things that are applied onto the gums. There were companies, certain dantmanjans, as they were called, do contain tobacco. So I think it's important, and very often people, by habit, but they've just been using this, and then they're not able to give it up because of the tobacco content. I'm not aware that any of the multinational toothpaste, no, they don't contain any nicotine. No. But in general, the content in both dentifrices as well as certain toothpaste has been known. Similarly, in the northeast of India, using tobacco water to gargle is again something that has been a common practice. So that's another important issue that I think we all need to know, that tobacco use is very, very strongly accultured in many parts of India. So using particularly smokeless tobacco. So it's very, very important to educate people that even though it's been a habit of centuries, the fact is that it's an extremely dangerous habit to health. So I think the medical professionals, whether dentists, doctors, nurses, pharmacists, everybody has a very important role in advising, educating people about the dangers of tobacco use.
One good piece of information that from Goa, Aruna has pointed out, the dentifrices which has tobacco content has been banned in the state of Goa. Good, I mean, it's definitely very, very common, Now, Dr. Jaswant, would you be discussing Ayush intervention in tobacco use? I like, although we are in third session, if you can actually speak from your side, we'll speak about the standard intervention. Definitely, when anything else is available, I will invite you to speak. We'll at least know alternative ways.
Maybe you could tell us this time whether in the Ayush, do they, what kind of questions do they ask about tobacco use in their patients? Maybe that would be relevant in this session.
But yes, when you approach a case of tobacco cessation as ICE perspective, just can you tell us what type of question you ask or how you approach? Okay, I'm unmuting you. Do you want to speak? You can go ahead. I've unmuted you, your mic. I think probably is not conveyed. Right.
There are some questions about management of withdrawal symptoms. I think we will be referring to them in the
management part. We have deliberately have 2 sessions. So Sasank, again the same question. Any Ayurvedic, homeopathic medicines or therapy is used as suggestion? Yes, we will discuss about the standard pharmacotherapy after the 3rd session. I know in the 3rd session. I have requested Dr. Yaswant to speak, to at least guide us regarding Ayurvedic and homeopathic part. Probably. Okay. Sorry. Thanks, Dr. Yaswant. I think his mic is not working. No problem. 3rd session we can take it up.
It would be interesting to know, are there any dentists who actually routinely, ask about tobacco in their practice? How do their patients respond when they do that?
Yeah. So, okay. Why not? The question is, I assume that there are a couple of dentists in our forum, and when you come across the patients with tobacco usage and have dental problem, how you approach it? You can unmute and go ahead. Yes. Yeah. Go ahead, I think. Yeah. I think there's a lot of noise is causing problem. Okay, let's.
Another important.
No, I think they written on dentist
information.
Often people use tobacco to manage dental pain. How do dentists address their this problem? I think very important question Dr. Smithy has asked. Right. So how I think this is very common. Using nicotine for dental pain, it suppresses, and how to address that one. I mean, there is no specific mechanism. There are a lot of Please keep your mic mute. Right. So the question was, I think the conventional thing is that obviously you have to educate him that there is other way to decrease the pain, and often the pain is associated with the damage to the gum, because of nicotine use, and probably offering the treatment. He's addicted, educate him and offer the intervention with the similar model of engaging him in treatment, personalized treatment, and offering the alternatives.
I think that the pain that that you spoke about, the physical oral pain, is no different from sometimes when patients come to us and they tell us that they use tobacco to reduce psychological pain. The important thing is that it's not a good medication, which is as a solution to pain. Of course, the patient needs to have some relief of the pain through safer methods. So trying to get to the root of the pain and trying to deal with it is important, but the patient should understand that tobacco is not the best form or the safe form to deal with that kind of pain. That's very important. But it's also equally important to make sure that you address the root of that particular pain and help the patient to deal with it. Otherwise, the patient will continue to use a very unsafe method for the relief of the underlying problem.
Saurabh has mentioned in North India, people are used to cause bull a jantamanjan, and they keep their mouth for 20 to 30 minutes sometime, and that gul which contains tobacco, and sometime when they do not get gul in the morning, they used to complain headache, dizziness, and dizziness sometimes. I think at least in eastern part of India they call gudaku. I think mostly extension of same thing. And as you pointed out, basically it looks like a part of withdrawal symptom when a headache, dizziness, or uneasiness when they don't not using the this identification. That must be the reason.
One important observation by Dr. Pfizer is that people who are having severe dependence on tobacco after having some myocardial infarction or after an angioplasty, often spontaneously stop tobacco.
Mhm.
So he was discussing about the cause of it. Is it due to fear of mortality or some other reason?
Again, I didn't get it.
It's, after myocardial infarction,
Yeah.
often people
No, I think that's well known. I mean, there is sudden life events, sudden changes. I mean, there is actually when a participant is written about his life history, where I think first of all, congratulations to the doctor that he came out and mentioned that he had a smoking problem, and almost 24 a day when he's working somewhere place on marriage, they have to relocate back to their home in native place, and the same day he quit smoking, and last 10 years he's not smoking at all. No relapse, no real symptom. Okay, just because I'm happy being with my family, is it willpower? I think I first congratulate you that ability to continue to be stopping tobacco for 10 years. I think is great achievement. But again, as I told, you mentioned clearly that the 1 to 2% of people who are lucky enough can do it. It's not known. It can be doable. But majority of people land up a problem before they think of quitting. See, where it's like one is a public health problem, 1 or 2% compared to a prevalence of 50%. So the point here is that there will be one isolated cases, a few cases will be there, but you need to offer facility to all the people to quit it.
I'm very fond of saying willpower is very good, but will's power is much greater than willpower. So you've got to, most people need help to give up.
So again, it shows how addictive nicotine is, right? We should caught one of 10 smokers and force him to smoke 100 cigarette continuously. Okay, after that particular person may quit smoking.
No, that has been
tried.
in behavioral therapy. That kind of aversiveness, has been tried. But obviously, it hasn't been found. There's no evidence base that works effectively, and therefore it's never been a popular way of quitting.
In fact, the paradigm of these treating substance disorders have moved from threat perception or this aversive treatment from one of self-efficacy and motivation enhancement and long-term follow-up and continued care.
Yeah, aversion has a poor results usually. The one that is mentioned. Is tobacco causes paralytic symptoms? Oh, I'm not aware of it. Saurabh, okay, paralytic symptom on it. Okay, I think if Saurabh, your question is about stroke. Yes, I think I probably missed the heading there somewhere. Definitely 2 to 3 times increased risk of stroke, CNS stroke. Yes,
in fact, in our hospital, when you look at young strokes, that is people having stroke before the age of 40, okay, tobacco use is a very, very strong risk factor for young stroke. Actually, another point incidentally that I wanted to bring up is when we look at the age, when we look at different populations who use tobacco, Dr. Prabhat already mentioned even among women it's almost 20%. We also know now that among the elderly, a substantial number of the elderly use tobacco. And many of the reasons associated with that is, of course, some of them would have started as young adults, but many of them start using in the older age group to deal with loneliness, to deal with isolation, to deal with mood changes. So I think the elderly population also is a population when they come for healthcare, you need to ask about tobacco use.
The similar thing which Dr. Reshma has told us, that is it some voidness, deep psychological voidness that impels elderly people to continue smoking, and whether mental health professionals can share the experiences. I think we'll come up with a case where we have dealt with such problems in future. We have treated couple of elderly patients, a good number of elderly patients with some depressive and adjustment disorders.
But the point is that definitely this age group where we have not actually focused in this thing, and their substance tobacco addiction is pretty high, and we need to address in different way. Okay, do tobacco affects brain mechanism? It's a brain disorder. I mean, tobacco definitely works in the brain, nicotine in the brain. Now, yeah, obviously it reinforces the addictive process, and on not taking the tobacco there will be withdrawal symptom. Now in the what it does grossly, obviously it increases for temporary part, it increases the attention and concentration as a physiological response of tobacco. And right, so I think we have a couple of minutes left. We should Devanjan's comment, I think. Thanks Devanjan for your comment. Women has exerted harm, specifically pregnant female. They can pregnant females. They can be an important target population. Yes, especially in rural areas. I think right. You see, one of the
Saranya from Bangalore. Saranya from Bangalore. My question has not been answered. You have put a couple of slides about number of dental students, medical students smoking and all.
Yes.
Do you think they are all not worth giving any kind of somewhat, tobacco cessation treatment? Especially this doctor who has quit smoking. I think he is the best person to, talk.
Okay, I think this is Dr. Ashok, I think.
A non-smoker only should treat tobacco cessation session. I think it is not a very ideal situation.
Okay, I think I'll throw the question Anand. Dr. Anand, this is for you. I mean, Dr. Saranya's point is that people who had been smoking and stopped, like you mentioned, they are the best person to, educate other people. So, what do your view about that? I have unmuted your computer. You can go ahead. Dr. Anand.
I use the same technique with my clients. I used to tell my story about the whole thing, and the education means, I have to reach what I practice. So I do it. It works well.
Yeah, and I think another point that needs to be emphasized is when you actually put up the information about the dentists and the medical students, actually tobacco use rates are lesser generally among the dental students than the medical students, because actually dental curricula have much more earlier incorporated tobacco cessation advice. So continuously talking about the harms from tobacco, etc., have actually got lesser use of tobacco among certain professionals. It actually means that even quite early in our training, we need to be exposed to the dangers of tobacco use and cessation so that we can integrate it in ourselves.
I think thanks Dr. Anand for nice point that, and then using those model in a patient and getting successful is very, very encouraging. Thanks madam for the question. Yeah.
And again, like most of the time, dental students, because of the stress, and I think as far as many studies have quoted, the stress is more among the dental students as compared to the medical. That itself may lead to one of the triggering factor for initiation of the tobacco. So, and it again depends upon the which stage, the year participant students were enrolled, whether they were the first year students, midstream, or else the interns.
Yes, I think well taken. I think that's right. And Dr. Aruna, where are you logged in? Which place?
What, sir? This is from ITS Dental College, Muradnagar, North India, Uttar Pradesh.
Thank you.
Madam,
so, it so happens.
Actually, the dental fraternity have taken on tobacco awareness and tobacco cessation, much earlier than the other professionals have done. And in fact, I think yes, the Dental Council of India actually already has a curriculum in place for teaching students in different years about tobacco use and its harm.
Yeah, I'm a public health dentist, so I need to
That's right. So I think that's actually resulted in better, in lower prevalence rate among dental students compared to medical students. But the point that you mentioned is very well taken, that stress is very often seen as a driver for such use. And again, it's important that we look at methods for reducing stress. And that brings us into the larger realm of, life skills, dealing with anxiety, dealing with, academic stresses. And
Coping skills and all needs to be like a thank you, ma'am.
From the
Thank
public
you.
health perspective, there has been a good suggestion from Dr. Sebin from Thrissur, who is saying that before screening movies, a short caption about tobacco cessation, it is being routinely shown in Kerala, in the state of Kerala. So he has suggested to extend it to all parts of the country and other states also.
And also it's asked whether this has been studied formally. First of all, we should go back and look
We
at
will
this
go
one.
and search literature regarding this.
Right.
Receiving a good number of questions.
I think we one last question. We just discussed the harms that are biological in nature. What about the harmful effect of tobacco on the psyche of the individual? Yes, I agree. How does tobacco dependence affect psychological process like emotion and sleep? I mean, there's no doubt in the thing. I'm deliberately kept the physiological is more visible, is more countable or more probably tangible. But there's no doubt that your person attentiveness, concentration, cognitive process, sleep and mood. All these things can interacted with nicotine intake and can definitely gets affected long-term intake.
There is also questions about stressors at very young age and subsequent development of substance use disorders. Yes, it has been formally studied. There is very well researched area that there are a relation between childhood stressors and subsequent development of substance use disorders, but probably we have focused on the biological and the physiological process, which could be easily highlighted in the busy clinical practice.
Especially among the rural populations, among the marginalized populations, among the lower socioeconomic strata, tobacco use as a means of impoverishment has also been studied. That actually tobacco use diminishes household earnings, diminishes expenditure on proper nutrition for families. So it has many, many consequences, including socioeconomic consequences for families, no doubt.
But I think we have a nice discussion, and thanks to all of you